My name is Matthew Ortiz. I want to make an updated video. I made like a last minute response for some of our customers after Trump the first or the second. There's been two or three lists so far that Trump has had that's barred Myanmar. So this one that bothered me the last time I made a video is when there was a list of like 8 countries that were all terrorist countries. And I was a bit upset, but trying to come up with a response because it was so hard to deal with emotionally. There's since been another list, which is a whole lot of extra countries. And these different lists have different reasons. And I had a theory a few months ago after we dropped some bombs on Iran's nuclear facility. But I didn't want to talk about it. If you don't know who I am, I'm a partner in Liberty Visa. I work for Yima'u. I'm the American that's involved. So I used to be a U.S. Army Special Operations Captain. So I did a lot of interesting things and know a lot of interesting things. A lot of those are secret, and there are good reasons not to tell secrets. And at that point, I thought that if I talked about my theory, that I could be creating a bigger problem. At this point, I no longer feel like that's a threat. I think that this can be okay to talk about what I think is happening. And that's because, I don't know if it's true or not. This video is about visas to the US, but a lot of times I get pulled into bigger things because even though Myanmar people are happy to care only about Myanmar and be fine with the rest of the world does what they want, Myanmar's some of the most important territory in the world, and that makes it relevant. Right? You're not being able to get visas readily has a lot of reasons, and one of those is because you own what in World War II General Stilwell called the key terrain in Asia for a war against China. General Eisenhower agreed with him. Admiral Yamamoto, I don't know if he wrote it, but his actions show that he believed the same thing, right? He moved a majority of his army to Myanmar, to Burma. When Chiang Kai-shek withdrew to 2 parts of key terrain, he had the key terrain of Taiwan, which was naval key terrain, and key terrain in northern Myanmar, which is physical key terrain. Right? All these, and Mao had the same fucking policy, right? Mao has been destabilizing Myanmar because Myanmar is the only country that can really threaten China. Because Myanmar has the advantage of the terrain, China has had a policy to keep Myanmar always fighting itself. So that's why these international politics become relative in getting US visas, especially now more than ever. So the first list was kind of simple. It was a surprise that we weren't prepared for and we didn't really understand yet, but now it's become clearer with more things Trump has said and done. Because he came out with the list, but he didn't talk about it, right? But he said lots of things over the last year that's made it clear what his priorities are. And these are actually domestic US, not international. So he started targeting countries that he called liars and cheaters. And this has become, I understood this before, but the example of Somalis in the US right now is a perfect example. So he looked at countries that send a lot of people to the US, and then those people lie and cheat and go on welfare or all the above or some of the above, right? So number 1 was lying on visa applications. He blamed the US Embassy in Myanmar for approving too many people applying for student visas and visit visas that did not keep their promise to leave the country or to go to school and then leave the country. They were just lying to get into the United States and then they applied for asylum. That is something that Donald Trump hates, is asylum people. Not the people in general, it's the tool. This asylum system in the US was getting taken advantage of way too often. And Myanmar people were one of the top countries for manipulating that. Now, Myanmar's a little special because you have both real asylum seekers and you have fake asylum seekers. The problem is that the fake asylum seekers steal the opportunity for the real ones. So that really makes Americans in our culture very angry that we create this process to save people, right? When you apply for asylum, that means that your government wants to kill you or put you in jail. Now, for the first few years that we were doing visas, 99 out of 100 people claiming to be asylum were lies, right? Blatant lies. I turned away a lot of customers if I thought they were lying. But now there's a lot more people that the government would kill or put in jail than before. So it has gone up, right? That brought more attention to Trump. One, it was already on a list of people that lied a lot and cheated, right? People changing their names on their passports. You know, you think the US doesn't know that people were doing it. We knew. But some people chose to ignore that. But Trump said, no ignoring it anymore, no asylum. So he stopped all of these people from being able to have an opportunity, right? We started out as a school, and we were helping students to try to realize their dreams and hopefully come back to Myanmar and make Myanmar a better country. But too many students were lying. They just got a letter to get into the US and then they never went to school. Then the second one, he doesn't like people who come to the US and then apply for welfare. Now, this is two things that might be the same a little bit at a time, but for Myanmar are mostly different, right? Because you've got two groups of people applying for welfare in the US. Most of them are people that won visa lotteries or got asylum the correct way by going to Thailand first. You know, it took them 20 years. And a lot of them got resettled in Indiana. But these were people that didn't speak English. They had problems finding jobs. So when you go to Indiana, you see a lot of Myanmar people on welfare. Now, when I first started getting involved with Myanmar people in 1999, it was at Titugu Pagoda in my city, Austin, Texas. And in 1999, most of the Myanmar people that were coming to the US were doctors and engineers. So this was a big change in maybe 2010 that we started having poor Myanmar come to the US instead of rich Myanmar. Again, this is something that sticks out to Trump. So we started getting all these people that couldn't speak, they couldn't work, and being on our welfare. Now, there were a few who lied to get on welfare, but a lot less than the Somalis, right? Somalis are like 100%, 99% of them. But Myanmar is still high on that list. So then the next list came out, and that was a list of terrorist countries. And I was really upset that Myanmar was on that list because no one in Myanmar is a threat to the United States. Do you have a lot of insurgents? Sure you do. But they're all fighting the Myanmar government. They're not going to fight the US, right? As far as I know, you've had one guy that went crazy with a gun in Thailand, and he was like a mental issue. Myanmar people generally are not a threat to any other country because your culture, you care about yourselves. But very few people in America understand that. Most people don't even know what Myanmar is. A few have heard of Burma. And when I try to tell them it hasn't been called Burma for 30 years, they get confused. You know, the most of the population in Myanmar right now never lived in a country named Burma. I argue that with college professors, with people in the embassy. Nobody listens. Part of the reason for that is because Myanmar people treat America as if it's England. Myanmar and America are not the same country. Not at all. We stole their language. That's it. We were a colony and we got independence, just like you did. America is more like Myanmar than it is like England. Now, India is different. The English gave independence to India. They didn't give independence to Myanmar. You won it, right? You fought and you died, and you won your independence. And England has been angry about that forever, and they fill the international news with bad stories about Myanmar and make everybody think Myanmar is a bad country, which it's not. It's actually one of the best countries in the world. However, most people argue that against me until they've lived in another country for 5 to 10 years, and then they agree with me. Right? All countries have good things. All countries have bad things. If we're lucky enough, we can get to pick and choose which ones we like. Most people get stuck where they're born. But I've been to over 30 countries, and most of them are worse than Myanmar, in my opinion, including Thailand. Right? But going back to this list, right, Myanmar is not a threat to the U.S., so I was really angry for a while. And I couldn't understand for a while until the day that we bombed Iran's nuclear facilities a few months ago. And then it clicked in my head. And I made that first video, but I don't think we showed it to all of our customers. In this, I want to show all Myanmar people, not just our customers, because this is way too important. So when we bombed Iran, I figured something out. And again, I was special operations captain. I was approved for promotion to major, but I got injured, so I couldn't be in the army anymore. But I focused on China. China was my enemy. I ran around the world watching what China was doing and reporting it. We have an asymmetric war against China. The news will call it a Cold War. It's not a Cold War. It's an asymmetric war. But people who haven't been in the army don't understand what... Even most people in the army don't know what asymmetric warfare is. We do, and I think Myanmar people probably have a word for it. China sure knows what it is. Because China does not say that we're competitors. China says we are their enemy and they are at war with us. That's their worldview, so I accept it. We are at war with China. You go around causing trains to crash and factories to blow up and all this other stuff that looks like accidents. It's not accidents. They do the same thing to us. They crashed our fucking train in Pennsylvania. Right? We're just better at it. We're much better at making it stay secret. Anyway, I know too many things is my point about China. So when we bombed Iran, that clicked in my head, this theory that now I have confirmation for. But before I get into that confirmation, I want to talk about the second problem that is not geopolitical, that it's because of Myanmar's policies. And this is something that other presidents didn't care about for a really long time. Myanmar has always been on this list of narco countries. So in that second list that had Myanmar together with a bunch of terrorist countries, my first assumption it was terrorist countries because I'd been fighting terrorists. Before I was against China, I fought in Afghanistan, right? So I had saw the list and thought these are a bunch of terrorist countries. Myanmar's not a terrorist country. Why is it on the list? And then I realized some of the countries are terrorist countries. Many of the countries are narco-terrorist countries, just like Venezuela, who you saw what we just did to them. And then Myanmar is not terrorist, it's not narco-terrorist, but Myanmar is officially a narco state, according to US law. It's on a list, I'm not making this up. It's officially on a list. And you and I both know that even though Myanmar people will never talk to a foreigner about it, you all know that you're a narco country. You all know that production of opium and KY is the majority income of Myanmar. And you don't talk about it, but you're secretly proud about it. And I'm not criticizing you for that. Fine, make money however you can make it. I just wish you would sell more drugs to China. But I'm just observing reality. Myanmar's on this list of narco countries, and Trump has a problem, a big problem with narco countries. You know, Obama didn't care, or Biden didn't care. Both Bushes didn't care, Clinton didn't care. So for a long time, you've been on this list of narco countries, but we didn't really do much about it. Right? Every once in a while, there'd be some failed mission of people trying to have education about drugs that nobody in Myanmar gave a shit about. They failed. So that reality is that now Myanmar's on two lists of countries that Trump doesn't like. One for liars and cheaters and welfare takers, and another for narcotics production. Other narcotics production, I would say personally, it's not fair to blame the Myanmar people for what the people who rule Myanmar do. It just is what it is. So that's the first two reasons that are within Myanmar's power to fix. And that's why Trump came up with these lists, to pressure these countries into pressuring their people to follow American rules when they come to America. Then the third one is the geopolitical strategy. So again, Myanmar is the key terrain in the world for a ground war against China. China keeps Myanmar poor and fighting each other because if you got your act together, you could conquer China very easy. Maybe not the whole country, but you could take back Tibet, you could take Xinjiang, you could take the South without really trying. Because in war, terrain is the number one factor. Right? Sun Tzu said that, other than espionage, which Myanmar people excel at. You guys are born for espionage. That might be another list that I don't know about. But I don't think so. I haven't seen anything to make me believe. I think most people in my government don't pay much attention to Myanmar. We've even had ambassadors here that I don't think they understood Myanmar. Maybe none of them, right? And if any ambassador understood, maybe they could make some better decisions and find out something to work together on. So anyway, I don't know what the word is in Myanmar, but in war you have a front, right? So generally in historic warfare, you got two sides. I'm making a simple example. You got people on this side where they're fighting each other and facing each other. That's called the front. And the front moves as the things in the situation of the war moves. But this is a front. So we are in an asymmetric war against China. And China, in 2001, had a general named Chi Haochang. And he had a speech to the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, right, the Chinese Communist Army, about their strategy to defeat the United States. And it was originally called three-war strategy. So they felt that they couldn't face the United States on their own. But if they could get the United States involved in three major wars around the world, that we would be so busy fighting so many people that they could attack Taiwan and then we wouldn't have enough military ready to fight them. Because they thought they couldn't defeat us if we could focus on them, but if they could keep us not focused, they could beat us. And that was part of their plan. Another part of their plan was to release a biological weapon. I think we all saw that happen. Whether it happened or not, it was in their plan and it was designed as a weapon. Whether you believe it got out as a mistake or on purpose or who was behind the leak. Of course, the United States was involved. We infiltrated it and we changed their virus so that it would be less harmful to Americans and more harmful to Chinese. That was the first level of infiltration that we had. The second level, they had 4 different versions of the bioweapon that they were trying to decide which one to use. But we bribed their general into choosing which one. Beautiful, isn't it? We got him to choose the strain that was less harmful to Americans and more harmful to Chinese. Now, when you watch videos now of shopping malls in China, where's all the people? It's because they died. They lie about it and say they didn't have any deaths. Hundreds of millions of Chinese died from their virus. But yes, we infiltrated and affected the virus. Why can I tell you that? I've just seen enough evidence on it. I didn't read a secret report, so everything that I know is either public or from my own personal experience talking to people involved. So anyway, they wanted a bioweapon and they wanted us to engage in too many wars. The attack in Iran was planned by China. It was financed by China. It was trained in Xinjiang. But they did it in a way to make it look like Iran was behind it, because Iran wants to get the credit for destroying Israel. So Iran agreed to go with China's plan. But China was the one behind it all. A week before that, there was a bunch of Chinese missile generals that were going missing. And people in China were trying to say that they were, kicked out of their positions or killed or something. But there's a strategic think tank that leaked that their guys were working on a secret mission that the world would see in a couple days. 2 days later was the attack on Israel. And then the generals came back. Yeah, we tracked the airplanes. We know. But why the government keeps it a secret, I don't fucking know. Because I think the world should know what China did so the world can make China pay. And it sounds like I'm getting off the topic of Myanmar visas to the US, but I'm actually not. This is all related, and that's why I'm saying it. So for decades, the United States begged Myanmar to be our ally. And every leader you had said no. Every leader you had chose to be friends with China instead of the US. Because Myanmar people see it that China's closer. So Myanmar has to be more friendly with their close neighbor than their far away, right, opposite side of the world. Unfortunately, that was a stupid decision. Because if you'd have chosen us, you'd be a rich fucking country and you wouldn't want to come to the United States. If you turned on China today, we will make you a rich fucking country. But no, everybody in Myanmar with any power just wants Chinese bribes. NUG included. They just want power so they can get bribed by the Chinese instead of the families involved in Tatmadaw. Right? And the US doesn't care enough to know that it's really a family fight. I tell the ambassador they don't care. They only care about fucking politics. But Myanmar keeps choosing China, and that's why Myanmar keeps suffering. I disagree with the blacklisting and the debanking and the embargoes. Right? It hurts the Myanmar people. It doesn't hurt the rich. But some people in my country are fucking stupid too. Especially working in politics in the State Department. They think they're fucking geniuses, but they're real idiots. So anyway, there's this front. And China's plan was to make America have fronts everywhere so we couldn't focus. But, we worked together with Iran, and the Arab countries are working together so that Yemen is no longer a problem. So all of the terrorist organizations in the Middle East are funded by China and Iran. Now, they get the money from Iran, but China gives the money to Iran to give to the terrorists. And Myanmar tries to stay out of it, but doesn't decide to help us against our enemy in China. So that keeps you on the list of countries we don't work with. We make it hard for you to get visas. But times are now changing. So the word is we'll probably attack Iran today or tomorrow. Is that true or not? I don't know. I've wanted us to attack Iran for a long time, especially from the beginning of the last month. And I've been to Iran. I know what the terrain looks like. I know how hard it is to fight a war in Iran. But that's by politicians, right? Trump doesn't fight like politicians. He doesn't let the politicians get a choice in how the war is fought. Trump strikes fast and hard and on a unique target. And if we do that, then Iran can't beat us. And once Iran is gone, that means that the front moves. The last thing on Iran, right now they're talking about nuclear strikes. Yeah, I hope we nuke them. That would be fucking awesome. I don't have any problems with nuclear war. Only people that don't understand nuclear bombs have problems with nuclear war. And the governments and the media like keeping everybody afraid of nuclear war. It's maybe time we got past that. And I don't mean destroy Iran. Just destroy a couple little tiny really important things that are beyond repair. And don't leave any radiation behind. So anyway, once Iran is dealt with, which might be in the next couple weeks, the front moves east. And that front has a line. That line is not, some of it is China's border, but not all of it. Some of it is Pakistan's border. And some of it is Myanmar. So this theory that I've had is to wait and see what happens, right? Because I had my theory, and now I got confirmation of it, right? I did asymmetric operations. Countries produce propaganda. So whenever you watch the media, when you start to see too many news organizations all saying the same thing at the same time, especially when it's a subject that wasn't popular before, you know that a government's paying for it. Now, England pays for a lot of propaganda against Myanmar to make Myanmar look worse than it is. But I've seen things, a lot of Chinese propaganda has popped up in Myanmar because they want to take your territory, and you know that. And the only reason they haven't grown the balls to invade is because they know that you'll win. They'll try to pretend like they're fucking stealth fighters and everything is going to make them win. But in Myanmar, technology doesn't matter. You know that, and in the pits of their hearts, they know that. Because they know if they attack Myanmar, all the groups that have been fighting each other will kill them. And I hope the Wa participate and eat them. That would be fun. But I'm getting off the topic. You know that China is a threat to invading Myanmar. You know they have a plan to get communists in Shan to turn on their side, then move into Mandalay. Then they have agreements with the Chin and Arakan. The Arakan in order to get access to the Indian Ocean, and the Chin so that they can flank Indian forces up in the Himalayas. You know that. The Indians know that. America doesn't. But what America will know once Iran is gone, that Myanmar is the front. And by all of the reports, the number of news reports about Myanmar of the last couple weeks have increased 100-fold. A lot more people are talking about Myanmar all of a sudden. And a whole lot of them are saying the same thing. They're reading the same script because they're paid by the same people to say what they want to say. And truth or not doesn't matter. Myanmar knows that. It's a war of deception, which you guys excel at. So you can see it. What Americans can't see, you can see. But it shows, right? All of this came out after we started preparing to fight Iran. So it means we're already preparing our information operations for the war to come here. So now you see why international policy is so important to this argument. Myanmar does everything it can to stay out of every country's wars. But because you help China, it's about to happen. Now, how it's going to happen, I have no fucking idea. I do have a feeling that Mandalay has CIA all over the place. And I'm sure your people know that. You're choosing to let them to be there. Why? I don't know. That's something you guys know better than me. You're better at deception. But you guys know about it. This is one of the reasons that even if you fix these other two problems, everything's going to change really fast for Myanmar. I hope for the better. If you choose to be friends with the United States, I think you'll win. If you continue to choose to side with China, the word win doesn't really make sense. Even losing doesn't make sense because what's going to happen is unimaginable to me. So right now, your visas are frozen for 3 reasons. Lying on visa applications, applying for welfare, being a narco state, and being friends with China. Now, the sooner you guys might decide to be our friends, the sooner you might be able to get off those lists, preventing you from being able to immigrate or even visit and go to school. Right, we've been focusing on work visas for the last few years, so that's why I started with immigration. I personally believe, because of the attorneys that we work with, they do not feel that any of the things that Trump's doing is really going to stop the employment visas. They said things like this have come up time and time again over the decades, and always things change and stuff moves around, and it doesn't have an impact. If you were to side with the United States, maybe you might ask to get taken off the list of narco countries. Because who is making all the money from the narco industry is the people that keep Myanmar allied with China. So I think, right, and I'm not in the army anymore. I don't have a clearance anymore. These people don't tell me anything anymore. I just have a lot of experience in watching these things happen. I used to be part of making it happen. So now I see things happening, I can see the pattern. If Tatmadaw wants to stay in power, and I know some of my Myanmar customers and a lot of Myanmar people are going to hate me for this, but I don't hate Tatmadaw. I have no problem with Tatmadaw. This isn't my country. I don't get to say who's the government. That's for you guys to decide. I apply for a visa, and Tatmadaw gives me a visa. I have no problems with them. I don't want any problems with them. But I think that if they want to survive, they need to turn on China really fast. Because once we destroy Iran, Pakistan's not a big problem. We already got a lot of things in place for Pakistan. And Pakistan likes flipping sides all the time with everybody. It's part of their culture. And I don't say that in a negative way. Pakistan has been both a great friend and a great enemy at the same time. You know? And I don't mean over time. I mean sitting at one meeting. I don't think we're going to need a war with Pakistan. I think that's going to be solved. Once Iran is out of the way, that's our big holdup. So I think once Iran is done, Myanmar's next. Guys got a short period of time to decide, do you want to die together with China? Or do you want to be America's friend and get rich? If you decide to be America's friend, there's a good chance you might be able to get your visas approved again. And you have the key terrain. Let us into Myitkyina, and China's done. Checkmate. They have no chance. Now, I don't know about Navy, but if you gave us a Navy base, it would be nice. Right? If we had a Navy base and an air base in Myitkyina. Right? You know about the Battle of Myitkyina in World War II? It was one of the most important battles of the whole world. It was arguably equally important to D-Day. For Air Force, Myitkyina controls China. If you let us have an air base in Myitkyina, we could destroy the Chinese Air Force in 5 minutes if they tried to attack Myanmar. They don't have enough airplanes. They could build 10,000 more airplanes and it wouldn't be enough, because Myitkyina is just the perfect place in the world for an air base. Give us an air base. You know, I don't speak for Trump, but we'll probably take away the embargoes, let you have international trade again, build you some big highways from Myitkyina to whatever naval base you let us build. And, you know, without the embargoes, your price of oil would go down. You'd get to buy good quality oil. But for the sake of my business, we could get to approve visas again. So I beg you, for the sake of Myanmar people being allowed to come to the United States again, please side with Myanmar. And if you did that, I don't know what's going to happen. I know you get rich. Now, who's getting rich in what form of government? I have no idea. I don't think that Trump wants to design a government for anybody. Right? He said in Venezuela, we're going to buy their oil, and we're going to make sure that they stop funding our enemies, and we're going to let them make their own choices and make their own new government. So I'm pretty sure that if you side with the U.S., that Trump will let you decide on your government structure. But if you continue to side with China and we have a hot war with China instead of an asymmetric war, you know, Tatmadaw is a powerful Asian country for military, but compared to the U.S., we only need a couple ships to destroy everything that you got. Your tanks are old. Your airplanes are old and not that good. If we want to attack Myanmar, it will take hours. To destroy all of your aircraft will probably take 15 minutes. To destroy all your air bases, all we have to do is hit a single button and all those missiles are in the air at once. Command structure, logistic structure. You barely have a navy. Now, how long does it take us to sink a couple of boats? If America decides to attack Myanmar, it's over before the end of the day. And my problem with that, one of the reasons I've supported, you know, not being against Tatmadaw, is because I know that if Tatmadaw fails, it creates a vacuum, and that's the day that China invades. Because China's not happy with you being a puppet state. China wants to control you. They're just too afraid to make the move. And they try to convince themselves that they have the balls. So on one hand, you got all these problems. And on the other hand, one little tiny decision that could change the whole world and make Myanmar one of the most powerful countries in Asia again. So once we're done with China, they're going to be nothing. Right? It's going to go back to the old ways. Indonesia is a powerful country. Japan is a powerful country. Korea is a rich country, right? You see, the people that choose to be our friends, even though they were our enemies before, anybody that makes friends with the US ends up rich and powerful, or at least rich. And Myanmar doesn't have to ask for power. You've got the advantage, you got the best terrain in Asia. You know that. Because if you decide to be our friend, you'll see so much money, it'll make the Chinese money look like the garbage that it is. But these are the problems that are holding up Myanmar visas, right? These are things that got to be fixed, and the sooner the better. At least, if Tatmadaw would come forward and say, hey, we'll come up with some plan to make sure that our people that go there don't lie and stay, right? You could do that. You could find things as collateral, right? What do the Chinese do? The Chinese say, oh, if you don't do what we want you to do in America, we're going to kill your family, right? That's what the Chinese theory on it. You don't have to do that. That's too crazy. But you could say, like, okay, right, most of our customers are middle class. You've got assets. You've got assets that you're afraid of Tatmadaw taking. So sign an agreement with Tatmadaw that you'll agree to just get an education and come back if they promise not to steal everything you got. It's one idea. And maybe it's a good idea, maybe not. I don't know. I hadn't thought this out. But what I think Trump wants, when I read the executive orders and the way the things are written and I look at the things that he says, I think he wants these countries on the lists to start negotiating with him. I think that's his number one goal. I think you can get off list number 1 and list number 2 if you just negotiate. But I pray that you do number 3 and become an ally. It would be nice to see Myanmar as a rich and powerful country. I would like to see people all around the world start wearing longis and buying the beautiful Myanmar shoes. The most beautiful shoes in the world. If I was a woman, I would wear only Myanmar shoes. Right, the first time I came here, I had such a beautiful country. Everybody wearing longi and paso. Now it's getting disgusting like every other fucking country in the world. Please also, whatever you do with visas, please go back to wearing longi. We don't need another country just like everybody. We don't need another Thailand. Myanmar is special. One, because of its terrain, but because of the unique culture that nobody else in the world gets to hear about it. The Brits hear about it because they had people, colonists, write books a long time ago. But please do these things. Please think about it.